in what is going on. Some people believe like that. I have no say in that. Okay? If God gets on me right now and He takes me to the chapel for adoration, that's where I will be. But it's not my choice. It's because God beat the devil to get on my back. I mean, how can one believe like that? But this is what Luther wrote. And this is what he believed. So you hear why I always call the so-called Reformation the deformation. Because it's no reform by any standards. The Protestant, so-called Protestant Reformation, it's not reformation by any means. This is what it is in essence. So I'm not responsible for the sins I do, okay? But also today we change it, we are responsible for the good we do, but not for the evil we do. Okay, that's why I can do something, and Horace, you come to me and say, oh, you did good. And I say, thank you. But when I do bad things, and people come to you and say, Horace, Father Mgaga is your friend, tell him that, who am I to judge? But you judged me when I did good. Why can't you judge me when I do wrong? So when I do good, you have a brain. When I do wrong, you cease to think. So you see our lack of reflection. Okay? But sometimes it stems from this kind of thing. So this is what Luther taught. Okay? So we have no free will. Just listen to it again. Okay? He only thinks that he's free. But in reality, he's like a horse which must obey the commands of its rider. In the case of man, the rider is either God or the devil. Depending on who of these is in the saddle, man will do good or evil. But it is not man who decides who the rider will be or where the rider will lead him. It is God or the devil. Luther draws out this comparison in a famous passage from the Servo Arbitrio, which was one of his favorite treatises. So he wrote it. It's not that someone is concocting words and putting them into Luther's mouth. He did it. Okay? So the human will stands like a saddle horse between God and the devil. If God mounts into it, man wills and goes where God wills. But if the devil sits there first, man wills and acts as the devil wills. Man has no power to run to one or the other of the two riders and offers himself to him, but the riders fight to obtain possession of the animal. So God and the devil are fighting who gets there first. Okay? So now basically here we'll be giving equal power to the devil, okay? That the devil has equal power to God. Because if God can be beaten by the devil to ride me, then it means that God is not all that almighty or powerful, because the devil can't beat him. Okay? So Luther retained this doctrine to the end of his life. It is not necessarily accepted by all Lutherans today. So the question is, why are they Lutherans?
Cultural problem.
Many of them don't know this. Yes, they don't know this. So this outright rejection of free will by Luther makes one wonder by what will Luther is rejecting Catholic teaching. You see the illogical nature of Luther. You are telling us we have no free will. So by whose will is he rejecting Catholic teaching? It would mean it is by the devil's will. So he is basically declaring himself to be the agent of the devil because he is deciding to reject Catholic teaching. But by whose will is he doing it? Because he has no free will. It's either God or the devil. Luther has no free will, okay? It's just the riders fighting to get on his back. So this time, who is riding Luther as he writes these things? Because Luther has no free will, therefore we have to decide whether it's God who is driving him or the devil. Okay? So, if one has no free will, one cannot accept or reject this teaching or that. It's obvious. The act of rejecting one thing to embrace another always involves the freedom of the will. If one goes back and critically examines Martin Luther's writings and teachings, it would be difficult for such a person to find him credible as far as the Christian faith goes. So if Protestants were to examine Protestantism critically, they wouldn't be Protestants. But unfortunately, many of them don't know, okay, their leader, what he wrote, what his beliefs were. They don't know his core beliefs. But this is how he believed.
Now, when you have these interdenominational churches, where do they believe? Or is it according to what the pastor?
Interdenominational, yes. I mean, those churches, it was I think Patrick Madrid or whatever, Patrick Coffin on Imagine Radio. By the way, do you listen to that radio while I'm still driving? Please do so. Okay. It's AM 970. It's they have some good informative programs there. Okay? So this man, that particular day was Protestants calling him why they are Protestants. Okay, so they were calling him, why are you Protestants? So Patrick Madrid said, or Patrick Coffin, that if you're a Protestant, call in and tell us why you're Protestant. Because you know these guys were Protestants before, so they know. Okay? So they know those arguments well. And so one man called in. He's one of these recent, so-called churches. And so the presenter, I think it was Patrick Coffin, asked him, okay, how do you know that what you believe, how do you know that what you believe is right? Well, because my pastor says so. How do you know that your pastor is right? Well, because he sounds convincing. That was his answer. It sounds convincing. So they don't have any sense of basically what we call the living apostolic tradition. That's how we know that we are right. Okay? You wouldn't know that I am right if I didn't have this tradition behind me. I wouldn't be teaching you what I think. And that's not what we are about. That's not truth. Truth is not a configuration or a compact of my mind. That's philosophy, and some philosophies are bad, but it is something I receive. As St. Paul says in 1 Corinthians about when in his institution narrative, I received it from Christ. I received it from, let's look at the text, to emphasize the importance of tradition. The first letter of Paul to the Corinthians, chapter 11, beginning with verse 19. 1 Corinthians, chapter 11. What did I say? Corinthians 1?
You said 11.
11. Gauge from Corinthians chapter 11. Let's say I'll go to verse 20. Whatever. Verse okay, let's go to verse 23. The whole chapter is very interconnected. So, but let's start with verse 23. For I received from the Lord what I also handed on to you. That's why we know, this is how we know that what we believe is true. Because we received it from those who received it from Christ. Okay. So I received it from the Lord, what I also handed on to you. Now, St. Paul is talking in the 50s. The middle of the first century. About 20 years after the death of Jesus. He's talking about something he received. So this is what we call the living apostolic tradition. So if your church, again, was formed 100 years ago, what are you handing on to others? Where did you get it from? They will tell you the Bible. As if the Bible dropped from heaven 100 years ago. Okay? So this is how people get into those silly mistakes. Okay. So let us now go to Jansenism. Okay? Cornelius Jansen, 1585, 1638. Jansen, the man, usually we say Jansen. Cornelius Jansen, Bishop of Yale in Belgium, was a deeply religious man of the staunchly rigoristic outlook who wished to restore the faith and the practice of the church to its pristine purity and austerity. Okay, so as we go through Jansenism, I want all you to remember what we've been talking about here, about human ideologies. If we are not very careful, our human ideology, as I said, human ideologies are very important if they are good philosophies. They help us to socially organize ourselves well. So ideologies are good if they are proceed from your reason. Okay? Some ideologies are very bad, okay? Like communism, you name it. Okay? But some ideologies may be good, okay? And they can basically help us to feed the faith into the culture better. Okay? So I'm not saying that all ideologies are bad, but what we have to remember is this, that an ideology should never be equivalent to the faith. Okay? Ideologies are of human origin, faith is of divine origin. Okay? So truth belongs to God, it doesn't belong to us. Our human ideologies may belong to us, but we should never identify the faith with an ideology. Now this man was so rigorous, okay? Today this will call ultra-conservative, that kind of ideology, and then confusing that with the faith. Okay? This is what led to Jansenism in a sense. And so he had a strong dislike for scholastic theology, which he thought too rational, and for Jesuits whose teaching he thought was too accommodating to the spirit of the world. So now many of you will say, yeah, Jansen, yes, go on, you're right. Okay, and probably he wasn't very wrong, but then he went into the opposite direction. You know, some people, some Jesuit priests mislead people. But as I told you before, my best teacher was a Jesuit. So if they are good, they are very good. If they are bad.
Isn't scholastic theology supposed to be rational?
Oh yeah, all theology is rational.
Well, how can it be too rational?
Was rationalism, okay? So being rational is different from rationalism, okay? Rationalism is whereby if it doesn't sound reasonable to me, it's not true.
So that was his complaint.
That is rationalism. So yes, he was saying that maybe the Jesuit theology is like bordering that kind of thing. So that was his query, okay?
So that was his complaint against the Jesuits or against the scholastics?
Scholastics, including the Jesuits, that kind of framework. Yes, okay? So So we should never label people like in the past. Some people say, oh, Jesuits are bad. Okay? That's not true. Okay? Some are bad, just as you can find bad people in a group. Okay? Okay, so Jensen's plan. Jensen found inspiration in the writings of St. Augustine, and they conceived the plan of going back to the writings of Augustine in order to draw from them the principles for a renewal of theology and a thorough reform of the church. So after many years of diligent study, during which he read the entire corpus of Augustine's writings 10 times, okay, and the Anti-Pelagian writings 30 times, he composed a massive tome entitled Augustinus. So he wasn't a man who just rushed into things. No, he was very thoughtful, he wrote methodically. Okay. So the Augustinus, in which he presented a personal synthesis and interpretation of Augustine's teaching. The work was completed shortly before Jensen's death in 1638 and was published 2 years later. It immediately attracted widespread attention. Many Catholics in Belgium and France regarded it as the master plan for the spiritual renewal of the church, which Protestant reformers had tried in vain to achieve, and which trend had only begun. Okay? So Protestant reformers did it in vain, meaning that they simply subverted the structures of the church. Okay? And as I said before, many of the clergy were not well trained, formed into the faith, so there was that laxity. So Jensen realized that in order to fight this laxity and so on and so forth, we have to get the ruler out. Okay? So errors in Jensen's teaching. Unfortunately, Jensen had read Augustine with dark glasses and had produced an interpretation of Augustine's thought that was strongly colored by the pessimistic and rigoristic view he brought to his study. As you know that sometimes we see what we want to see. So when he went to Augustine's teachings, he saw what he was looking for. Not that it was there, but because that's the framework through which he perceived it. He filtered it, his rigoristic view, okay, understanding. So because of a number of serious doctrinal errors concerning grace and free will, the Augustinus was censored by Pope Urban VIII in 1642. I mean, this man did all this work for so many years, and the Pope condemned it. 11 years later, Pope Innocent X specifically condemned 5 propositions taken from the work, the Augustinus. The first of these relates to the matter we are presently discussing, namely the necessity of grace. Speaking about the difficulty of observing God's commandments, Jensen writes, some of God's commandments cannot be observed by just men with the strength they have in the present state, even if they wish and strive to observe them, nor do they have the grace that would make their observance possible. Now, how did he get to this from Augustine? Augustine never said that. But look at some of God's commandments cannot be observed by just men with the strength they have in the present state. Because when we say just men, it means those who have been justified, the baptized. So what he's saying is that there are some commandments of God, even after God giving us the grace to be able to do good, we can't do. Then the question would be, why would God command the impossible? It's impossible for God to command the impossible. If God commands, He gives us the tools we need to do His command. He wouldn't command it if we are not able to do it. Okay? So Jensen didn't really think it through. So some of God's commandments cannot be observed by just men with the strength they have in the present state, even if they wish to strive and observe them, nor do they have the grace that would make their observance possible. Meaning that God is asking us to do something, but God doesn't give us the grace. So whose fault is it that I cannot observe some of God's commandments? No, it's God's fault because He didn't give me the grace. At least according to Jensen. So see the danger, okay, of these teachings. Okay? If I can't do it, I go to God directly and stand before Him and say, it's your fault. I prayed and prayed, you didn't give me the grace. So, God, who sinned, me or you? That kind of thing. Okay? So, that's we are just going through these main very quickly. Okay? They wrote first volumes and you can go and read more about them, but at least for our purposes here, we are talking about the common errors that have been committed against the church teaching on grace through the centuries. Yeah. But there are many other issues involved in Jansenism. But for our specific purposes, this is what we are looking for. Okay? That God cannot ask us to do something we cannot do. And if He asks, He provides the grace. God cannot deny me the grace I need. Okay? That I can't be a good priest because God doesn't give me the grace. I can't be a good husband because God doesn't care. He doesn't give me the graces I need to love her. So it's not my fault. No, it's impossible. Okay? Pasquale Quesnel, okay? 1634, 1719. Okay, Quesnel, a member of the congregation of the oratory and the spiritual director of students at the Sorbonne University in Paris, was one of the leading figures in the Jansenist movement at the turn of the 18th century. Remember, Jensen died shortly before the publication. Now it was up to his staunch students to continue the movement. He wrote several books of spiritual reflection. Now this is Quesnel. Okay? He wrote several books of spiritual reflections on the New Testament, which were widely read, but which unfortunately present an overly pessimistic view of human nature. Quesnel used bold strokes to paint a dark picture of human depravity. The very excess of his writings exerted a strong appeal to people of rigorous outlook who thought that he was courageously proclaiming the truth about the depraved condition of fallen humanity. Okay? So if humanity is so depraved it can't save itself, so let us be the savior of humanity. Okay? So condemning propositions. Okay? In 1713, that's why we have to be thankful that we have the magisterium. Because if we didn't have the magisterium, all these would be now different churches within the Catholic Church, like Protestants do. If Jensen doesn't agree with the Pope, he will form another church. If that other church, two pastors don't agree, one leaves and forms another church. They go on. So, but for us, we have the magisterium that can tell someone, a Catholic, that you are in error. This is what we teach. So in 1713, Pope Clement IX condemned 101 propositions taken from Quesnel's writings. 101. So many heresies, of which the following relate to the necessity of grace. Although some of these propositions could be given a benign interpretation if read in a different context, in the context given by Quesnel, they exaggerate the corruption of fallen human nature and unduly limit the freedom of the will and the ability of fallen man to do good. Okay, let's take a break. Then we'll look at